Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm one of the outreach workers for the rough sleeping team, covering the Wellingborough and the East Northants area. So it's just a little presentation about the Women at Risk group that we've created and how it all works. So as an introduction, women at risk are women that experience homelessness or hidden homelessness. For example, sofa surfing or making unsafe arrangements. So it's not necessarily somebody that is rough sleeping. We know of a lot of the women that we support are part of the sex working community, and they make arrangements during the night to obviously stay in unsafe places. They're often impacted by various factors, including domestic abuse, sexual exploitation, and trauma. They'll face barriers when they're trying to access the services due to safety concerns, the chaotic lifestyle that they lead, and the stigma attached to attending. So there'll be some of the ladies that won't be able to attend to their appointments or come into our drop-in because they have somebody waiting outside for them. They don't feel comfortable staying for too long. The women at risk will face challenges such as being high risk of violence and exploitation, mental and physical health concerns, legal and financial vulnerability. So included in all of this as well are the women that we're supporting that are in either temporary accommodation or they're in secure accommodation as well. They just need that extra support. Okay, so an overview of the group that we've started. So it started in October 2024. It's a dedicated safe space for women experiencing vulnerability within the hidden homeless and the rough sleeping community in North Northants. So it's developed with support from the Daylight Centre in Wellingborough. It's a safe space. It's a familiar space for those that are known in the rough sleeping community, somewhere familiar that they can go to. The group aims to provide safe support, empowerment and dignity in a non-judgmental environment. So we wanted to develop a space which was relaxed and welcoming to anyone that wants to attend. We're offering practical and emotional wraparound support for those people experiencing complex challenges such as homelessness, domestic abuse, mental health, substance use and social isolation. So we have dedicated professionals that attend the drop-in that are available to support with any complex needs. Following a group discussion, a recent drop-in, the service users that attended and the providers created a new name for the service, and it is now called Empower Her. This has just enabled the service users to gain some ownership of their safe space. It gets the ladies involved in the discussions of how the drop-ins are run, and obviously makes them feel more part of that process as well. So how it works. Empower Her runs fortnightly as a female-only open access drop-in. It's on every other Wednesday at the Daylight Centre in Wellingborough from 1:30 to 3:30 p.m. Service users have access to hot showers, refreshments, clothing, toiletries, informal chats and one-to-one support. So there's food provided, hot and cold food. They have cakes, mixture of stuff, so they can either take it away, literally just come in to drop in and get some food and go, or they can sit in and have a meal, and while they're having that meal they are engaging in the support. We play games, we've got board games, we have beer pong, obviously without the beer, pamper sessions, just these sort of things to help build those relationships. There's the support available from the rough sleeping team, probation, CGL, social inclusion, C2C, NDAS, sexual and physical health, and single session therapy. So there's a growing list of professionals. We're able to arrange appointments with their female clients at the drop-in, which then introduces them and encourages them to gain support from other professionals. We have been developing partnership working to ensure every woman feels seen, heard and supported. So it's just making sure that with their consent, they don't have to repeat their story, because it's that repeating the trauma. So we all work together to support each individual, so we all know that her story. We provide a consistent approach, promoting engagement and building relationships, making sure that they know support is available. They might not access it the first, second or third time that we offer, but when they do approach and when they do come to the drop-in, they know that that consistent service and support is there waiting for them. So just some facts and figures from our sessions. So the first session was we had 4 attendees that visited, and there was 4 professional services as well. So it's obviously a new service that we were developing, but now for the latest session we've had 10 attendees with a total number of 109 service users that have attended across all of the sessions, which is fantastic. The last session we had 10 professional agencies attending, providing that wraparound support. We've had 3 females in one session that were able to complete a data report with the complex needs IDFA, and they've been accepted to receive ongoing support. We've got feedback gathered from the sessions which demonstrate that each female experience feeling safe and respected whilst at the group, which is obviously what we're aiming for. So service improvements and development. We have regular meetings with the Daylight Centre and with the other professionals as well to see how we can improve the service that's being offered. So we discussed changing the time of the session to enable women who have children in school to attend. So it was raised by a few of the service users that they have children that are in childcare, or they have people that look after their children and they need to be able to attend the service. So we've changed that session time now from 1:30 to 3:30 instead of later on in the afternoon, so it just allows more people to attend. We've explored sharing legal information and incorporating debriefing sessions between the professionals. Sorry, I think I lost signal there. So we're
Hiya. Zoe, I think you might be struggling with internet connection.
Oh, I'm so sorry, my connection's really poor. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so we're planning to visit other women's centres to improve on the learning and adapt our techniques. So we've had visits already to C2C in Kettering and the Bedford Women's Centre, and we're looking to expand that as well. We're thinking about the language that we use whilst at the drop-in. It was raised a little while ago that we refer to a child under the age of 18 as a vulnerable child.
I think we've lost her again. I'll continue while Zoe is still trying to get connection back.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry. I'm back. I'm so sorry. This signal's really poor in this office. Yeah, so we're looking to expand into the Corby and Kettering area to offer that level of support for the ladies in there as well. Just a few feedback and success stories that we've had. So following the most recent drop-in, we had a service user attend. She said that she'd previously been, but had quickly just gone in and got some clothes or some food and then nipped out again. But she was actually able to access support while she was there last week. And she reported back to her S2S worker that she was really taken back by how much support there is there and available, and that everybody's there in one place. So she's keen to attend again, and is confident that services are there to help her and not to judge. We also had a female who was extremely vulnerable, was really scared to come to the drop-in, but she confided in her S2S worker that there was sexual exploitation going on. So she was able to have the wraparound support while she was at the drop-in, and we actually managed to get her into emergency temporary accommodation to remove her from the immediate risk. The number of professionals that have attended has risen significantly, and they are seeing an increase in the engagement from their clients as well, praising the safe space that we have created. Just wanted to share a little slide of the actual drop-in details, and there's a few pictures there as well of the drop-in that people attended last week. Yeah, so if you have any ladies that you are supporting or think that might benefit from the service, please direct her to us, and I can send out the leaflet that goes with it as well. And that's it from me. Is there any questions? Hopefully not. I'm not seeing any hands. I'm going to hand over then to Tanya for the NGU project.
Hi there, my name's Laurie Chapman. I'm the Accommodation Services Team Leader here at NNC. Just going to give you an overview of our Never Give Up project. Next slide, please. So about the Never Give Up project. So this project is fully grant funded via the Rough Sleeper Accommodation Programme. And comprises of 16 units of self-contained accommodation dispersed across North Northamptonshire. It sits within our accommodation service in Housing Solutions at the council, and it's aimed to support people who are experiencing multiple exclusion homelessness and those with the highest complex needs. We're lucky to have residents within the scheme supported by 3 dedicated tenancy support workers. They're really experienced and work in a trauma-informed and person-centred way to apply the Housing First principles to ensure support and success for this cohort of individuals. The team works in collaboration with the Rough Sleeping team at North Northampton Council, who work to deliver the wraparound support to all the residents, no matter what their presenting need might be, substance misuse, mental illness, health or physical care and support needs. And referrals from the project come directly from the council's Rough Sleeping team. The accommodation isn't time limited, so it allows the time for the support to kind of be really proactive, and we aim for 2 years, aiming to be tenancy ready within 2 years, but you know, if that's not the case, that's not an end date. Next slide. So just a quick overview of what multiple exclusion homelessness is. So it's the recognition that not having a home is a presenting issue, but often there are lots of other severe and overlapping disadvantages, such as substance misuse, institutional experiences like being in prison, being sectioned or being in psychiatric hospitals, you know, leaving the care system, mental health issues and a history of trauma or abuse. People facing these complexities find it really hard to access mainstream housing and maintain that mainstream housing. So this project supports long-term to increase stability and reduce the patterns of instability that come along with multiple exclusion homelessness. Next slide, please. So the Housing First principles, very quickly, is the recognition that everybody has a right to a home. So it aims to provide housing as quickly as possible and not under any condition other than the willingness to maintain a tenancy longer term. Flexible support is provided for as long as needed. So we as the provider commit to that long-term support and the flexibility that comes with that for our cohort. The housing and the support are separated, so there is support from the support workers to maintain the tenancy and address the needs, but it's not conditional on engagement, and housing will not be withdrawn if people choose not to engage with support services. Individuals have the choice and control. So where possible, there'll be choice around where accommodation is, what's suitable and is going to give the best chance of success regards location. The support's person-centred, and you know, the individuals are involved in shaping that support plan and the support they want to receive to work towards their goals. An active engagement approach is used, so very small caseloads allow our support workers to be persistent and proactive in the support. So we aim for around no more than 5 to 7 homes and individuals per tenancy support worker. The support again is provided for as long as needed, and the support is continued even if that individual chooses to leave their home. So some people who've got the history of rough sleeping like to spend some time in their home, and that's okay. It's around what they want. The service is based on people's strengths, goals and aspirations. So the project's underpinned by the philosophy that there's always the possibility for positive change. It identifies strengths and goals on an individual basis, and supports there to increase self-esteem, self-worth and confidence, focusing on that reintegration into society. A harm reduction approach is used. So for us, that means the individual is supported holistically, with the aims to reduce risks and minimise harm. And a lot of the work that's done is geared towards harm reduction. Next slide, please. So operationally, we have our tent support workers, but when we spoke about the rough sleeping team and the wraparound support, I'm really lucky to have that to include Michelle, who's a rough sleeping social worker with us, Ben McCauley, who's the mental health homeless practitioner, Amanda Cambridge, who's the substance misuse outreach nurse, so she's a physical health nurse, and Lineker and Karen, who are the homeless outreach recovery practitioners working closely on substance misuse. So the tenancy support workers work very, very closely with this team, complete joint visits and look at all the areas of need to ensure the success. Next slide, please. And it is an award-winning project. So the team won a national award, a Housing Hero Award. They were shortlisted from many applications for the award, down to 12 on the night, and they won, and it was very well deserved. Now I'm going to hand over to Tanya, who is one of our tenancy support workers in the Never Give Up project. She's going to give you a little case study for support of how she's supported her residents. Thanks, Tanya.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm just going to give you a little case study of one of the individuals that's been supported and moved on within the project. Names have been changed, obviously. So, the background about this individual is Fred lived with his partner in a rented accommodation. After the relationship had ended, he struggled to afford the property alone and was eventually evicted. He'd got an old caravan, so he moved into that, which he'd located in a car park. But the owners of the car park obviously didn't want that caravan there, and it wasn't appropriate for him to live there. Fred would use the daylight centre in Wellingborough quite a lot, and he was accessing that, but he was very quiet, kept everything to himself, wasn't really sharing any information. He was identified by the rough sleeping team as sleeping rough, and they had made numerous attempts of, bringing him in, particularly during SWEP, obviously, but he was really reluctant. Eventually, Fred said, yeah, okay, I'll go into one of these NGU project properties and we'll see how it goes from there. And initially, he was very closed. He didn't really want to talk about anything, but he'd got his ideas of setting up his own business as a swim coach, and he'd already started the process and looking into all of these things. He was very focused and he was constantly learning all sorts of things. He settled into the property quite well, and we supported him with accessing various different systems and understanding how his benefits would work with his self-employment and such like. As the support built, his support was built through trust and consistency, reliability, patience and understanding, and really hearing what he wanted and understanding who he was and who he wanted to be. The support worker encouraged him to follow this dream. So with the assistance through education, training opportunities, equipment for his career and guidance on managing bills, accommodation and daily living responsibilities, he grew in strength and every day he started opening up a lot more. He began to thrive in all areas of his life. He became busy with work as a swim coach and pursued further education to support his business dream. He understood his NGU property was temporary accommodation and prepared for a permanent move on. He could confidently manage a tenancy. After about a year, Fred was successful. He transitioned into his forever home with his dog while running his own business as a swimming instructor. The key learnings from this was trust takes time. Consistency, patience were crucial in building a relationship with Fred. Pets matter. Allowing Fred to keep his dog was a turning point in his willingness to engage and to accept housing. Holistic support works, addressing both practical needs, housing bills, and personal aspiration, career goals, enabled Fred to thrive. Sustainable independence, the NGU project provided a stepping stone preparing Fred for long-term stability. And I'm happy to answer any questions about it.
Thanks, Tanya. If no one's got any questions, we've got hand over to Becky really quick. So Becky's been with us as a tenancy support worker for a couple of months, but has already got an example of how that multi-agency working with the other agencies involved has secured a positive outcome for one of our tenants. Becky, over to you. Have we lost Becky?
Oh yeah, no, I'm here. Sorry, I was just on mute.
All right, my love.
Oh yeah, I've been part of the team for about 6 weeks now, and in that short amount of time, I've been working with one of our tenants, and I've just been blown away by how brilliant the treatment team works together. So on the treatment team with this particular tenant, since October, we've been working with him. He's been known to NCC and accommodation services, I think, since around 2019. He's got his NGU property, but he's got struggles with mental health and ongoing substance misuse. There's been a few challenges to engage him. He does struggle to keep hold of a mobile phone and has got a bit of a chaotic lifestyle. So we've really had to work together to keep communication flexible and to maintain that engagement. So the whole team's been really supportive, doing ad hoc joint visits with me, liaising regularly, having meetings with the treatment team, and we've been able to gift him just a basic mobile phone so he can keep communications with us and his support network. So yeah, through that team, he's managed to engage with mental health services, he's accessed dental care, and today he is offering inpatient medical detox, and we're looking at rehab placements once he's been discharged, so we can continue to support him.
Thanks,
So, yeah.
Becky and Tanya. You're both absolutely fantastic. Any questions about the project? Thank you. I'll hand over to the next speaker.
Hello everyone, good morning. Thanks for the previous speakers, the excellent presentations. I'm going to speak this morning about the accommodation for ex-offenders scheme. My name's Rachel, I'm the landlord liaison officer for the project, and I've sort of been looking after it for the past sort of 3.5 years. Let me just check the slides. So what I'm going to be talking about today is what the AFIO scheme is and sort of what we do, some background to the scheme, how it was founded, some reflections and challenges of the private rented sector, talk briefly about phase 3, which is what we're in currently, and the new incentive package we've sort of started to deliver. Look at some of our successes, the data. I've also got some testimonials if we have time to go through them, and then talk about, I think, one of the biggest building blocks of the project, which is quite a recent development, which is our pre-release panel meeting. So let's begin. So what is the AFIO scheme? So AFIO stands for Accommodation for Ex-Offenders, so I'll use that throughout. So it's to support ex-offenders who might otherwise become homeless upon release to access the private rented sector, and reduce the challenges faced by ex-offenders to secure suitable housing and to support them while they're in those tenancies. So we know housing is just one challenge faced by ex-offenders, but there's a clear and strong link between reoffending rates and access to stable and suitable accommodation. So 53%, I think it was a Ministry of Justice study in 2022, it suggests that offenders in stable accommodation are about 50% less likely to commit future crimes. So it has a really big impact on reoffending rates once people have secured stable accommodation. we were developed to complement the Ministry of Justice Community Accommodation Service. If you're not familiar with that, that was a new scheme implemented, I think, in July 2021, which provided offenders identified as not having accommodation upon release into that provision housing for 84 nights. So there's no charge to the person staying there, and it's a chance for sort of support services and accommodation services to really begin working with them and to sort of support them before they sort of re-enter the community fully. Background. So we've been operating since July 2021, and we were originally a government funded initiative funded by DLUC. So the funding phases have seen us sort of arbitrarily sort of fall into these 3 phases, with phase 3 being our current. I'll talk about that in a couple of slides. But originally how the scheme was conceptualised was that in phase 1 and phase 2, when we were sort of grant funded, we were able to provide a package of incentives to support tenants and to sort of get landlords on board, really, with, you know, opening up opportunities for ex-offenders into their accommodation. So we were able to provide the first month's rent and deposit on behalf of each tenant. And we had flexibility to provide a payment of additional month's rent to cover any sort of circumstances that may arise, you know, loss of employment, if universal credit wasn't quite in place, just to, again, to sort of cover all bases and work on sustaining the tenancies. And we also had access to an excess damage and unpaid rent guarantee, which covered an additional 1.5 times the rent equivalent. So that was our original package. We rolled that out across phase 1 and phase 2. At the end of phase 2, the government funding sort of ceased, and we became sort of under the umbrella of the accommodation services in the council. So we were funded a little bit differently. So we had a little bit more flexibility and scope to think about what we were offering, what was working well and what wasn't. So part of this process was really to think about some of the reflections and challenges of the private rented sector and how we were moving forward going to be able to meet them. So thinking about the difference between 2021 and sort of where we were in 2025, we noted that there was a massive price increase in the cost of private rented sector accommodation. So the standard room in a sort of rental HMO, when we started in the beginning, we were looking at about £450 per month. Now that's gone up to 600 and in some cases 650. So we need to be mindful of, higher cost to tenants. There was obviously a disparity between what people were receiving for the LHA rates and this rent, and tenants were being left with quite a significant shortfall. And towards the end of phase 2, we really had to be mindful of affordability. And at that time, we were trying to support people into employment to sort of meet this shortfall, because unfortunately we didn't have the funds at that time. So this was definitely something that we wanted to address moving forwards in order to, you know, widen the amount of support we were being able to give to ex-offenders and to include everybody within the scheme. We also noted that landlords had a preference for persons in employment, and that, combined with obviously the shortfall between LHA rates, meant that people that were not able to seek employment were sort of not willing to work at that time, or had other circumstances that prevented them from accessing employment, couldn't actually access the private rented sector, and were being sort of unnecessarily diverted into supported accommodation services, and sort of adding to obviously the huge demand that those services already have, just because really of the financial implications of the private rented sector. A massive theme that came up through this sort of process as well was consideration of the financial losses of landlords. You know, what was preventing them from engaging with us? What did they want from the scheme? And sort of protecting their interests, I suppose. For a lot of people, this was their business, and you know how they make money. So we needed to be mindful of that as well, with how we sort of engaged further with the private rented sector. So what did that sort of mean? So that took us forward to phase 3, which is this current financial year. So like I said before, we've had a new funding stream, which has allowed us a little bit more flexibility in terms of the incentives that we're able to offer. So that additional funding allowed us to implement a new package of incentives. So we've now got a universal credit top up. So anybody that has that discrepancy between what they're receiving in universal credit and the cost of the private rented sector room that they're wanting to access, we would pay the difference for up to 12 months in advance to the landlord as one lump sum to protect that tenancy. We also offer now a 4-month guaranteed rent period. So basically it does what it says on the tin, guarantees rent for 4 months for the landlord. This is alongside paying their first month's rent and deposit. So if we think about that as a whole package, we're really offering sort of financial stability for a person for 6 months. I think which was the main concern of most of the landlords that we work with, would, you know, be how people are going to maintain the tenancy moving forward. So we really wanted to support people and get them in there. Also fits with changes to the renters reform bill that's coming in. Well, it's starting to be rolled out now, but will certainly be rolled out and in operation next year, and to cover the sort of longer rental arrears period that's going to be form part of that act. Alongside all this work, I have 2 tenancy support workers who are wonderful and do a lot of support with people on the ground, and that really is anything from sort of facilitating sort of universal credit appointments, helping with food and bedding. One major thing that they've been working on over the last year has been strengthening links with employment agencies and organisations locally. So where people have identified that they want to return to the workplace, we've really been trying to work hard with supporting them with that, and helping with CVs, applications, interviews, etc. Obviously, we continue to build relationships with local landlords and letting agencies, because without them we can't do our wonderful work. And support individuals into accommodation through the establishment of the prison pre-release meeting. I'm going to sort of put that point on hold for a couple of slides. Like I said, I will come back to the pre-release, but I just wanted to give you an overview of sort of what we've been doing over the last 3 phases. So the left-hand column is the phase that we're in. Phase 2 was split into 2 stages for funding means, and then we were targeted every year by DLUC at the time to achieve a certain number of tenancies. So in phase 1, if you read across, we were targeted for 35 and achieved 34. Across both stages of phase 2, we were targeted for 30. We had 29 in the first and 31 in the second. And then currently we've been very, very optimistic, perhaps, but we're with the new package of incentives, we're confident that we can sort of push it further. And we've actually targeted ourselves for 40 this year, and I think when I wrote the slides it was 21. I think we're actually up to about 24 now, so that's really great news and sort of bodes well to us sort of hitting the targets. That's wonderful. I've got a few testimonials. I'm hoping I'm okay for time and have time just to read through them. These are from 2 ex-offenders that we helped access private rented accommodation. I'll just read them out quickly. So it says, the scheme has allowed me to move on with my life. I would not have been able to access private rented accommodation without the assistance of Lettings Plus. Just have to note, Lettings Plus is our sort of outsidey world name, and the one that's advertised on sort of social media and the like. I don't know where I would have ended up. I wouldn't have been able to continue working without accommodation, and Lettings Plus made it possible. And one further, the Lettings Plus scheme played a vital role in me finding accommodation after coming out of prison. Resettling into my local community was incredibly important and a big part of my rehabilitation. Without the time and help and generosity of the guys at Lettings Plus, I wouldn't be where I am now, and I will always be incredibly grateful to them. I think that's really nice to sort of get some service user feedback. So moving on to the pre-release panel meeting. So this has been sort of quite a new sort of thing that's been implemented by the team, well, very heavily pushed by the team in partnership with probation. So I think the pre-release panel meeting was a historic thing that sort of unfortunately hadn't continued. So we thought that it'd be important to sort of relook at that and get it up and running again. This was successfully implemented with colleagues from, like I said, the probation service and West Northants Council. And it's a monthly meeting involving key stakeholders discussing the prisoners identified for release. So this allowed us to really capture sort of information about who was coming up for release, whereas previously on our referral pathway, we were just sort of capturing those offenders that were coming through the CAS3 pathway. So it really gave us a huge advantage in being able to sort of put those support networks in place before the person had even left custody, and have a sort of an accommodations plan before sort of, like I said, before release. It also solved the problem of later referrals into AFIO. So although they've got 84 nights in CAS3, sometimes we were getting the referrals late, and it gave us sort of limited scope to work with people and to find private rented accommodation options. So again, really, really beneficial in terms of helping us sort of help everybody. Also identified prison leavers not exiting custody via the CAS3 pathway for any sort of reasons, and sort of obviously prevents ex-offenders being released as street homeless. So the stakeholders involved within the pre-release is our team, the AFIO, our North Northants Housing Options team, our North Northants Rough Sleeper team, probation staff, persons from West Northants, so their housing navigators attend regularly, the Reconnect service, which is offered via probation, S2S and adult social care. So in brief, to summarise, obviously it allowed us to discuss cases and their suitability for AFIO, as well as obviously signposting to other services, and promoted a real collaborative approach between all the housing teams and services which attended. I haven't got any sort of tangible data to support the impact of the pre-release panel meeting yet, but there's been lots of anecdotal data from sort of staff that we've worked with, that it's been really beneficial, and it means that sort of we're really sort of targeting those cases and providing accommodation solutions before release, which is obviously hopefully having a positive impact on those people and sort of the opportunities that they have after custody. That's the end of my presentation. So if anybody has any questions. No? Okay, I will hand over to Catherine and Julie.
Thank you very much. I'm Catherine Martin. I am a senior social worker in the West Northants Adult Social Care. Pleased to be here, so thank you very much. Let me just move on. So obviously what we're going to just kind of run through really from an adult social care perspective is what is good practice for us within the West, and the main focus is for us really is around person-centred care. So that's about focusing on people's dignity and promoting their independence, to make sure that actually the assessments and the interventions that we provide are tailored to their needs and they're holistic. Another central part to good practice is around workforce development. As you're all aware, obviously adult social care is a statutory service, and therefore we have to ensure that anybody that undertakes our statutory duties, is it's important that they're appropriately trained. Hence why some of you guys will maybe come across some people that are social workers, some that are adult social care workers, and some that are seniors. But it's obviously really important that we ensure consistently that they're trained to the level in order to provide those statutory duties. Our workforce development is, like I say, is really, really central to make sure that we are delivering effective support services, whether that's in the care that we provide, the formal provision that we provide, but or also the kind of information and advice that we also deliver to the people that come into contact with adult social care. So part of our training is also to kind of ensure that that's fluid as demographics change, in terms of, obviously we undertake a lot more training around fuel poverty. You guys are probably also aware that AI is out there a lot now, so we're having to do a lot of development and training around the use of AI and how we can kind of use that effectively and safely in the delivery of services. The other part to good practice is the quality standards and governance. You're probably also aware, in terms of our recent CQC visit, which obviously we're still awaiting for the outcome of that. I mean, we had CQC a long time ago, but this is all kind of quite new to us again. So obviously they've undertaken an assessment. Part of that is also what we've been implementing in the background, is to make sure that the frameworks that we have around our practice and the delivery of those services are robust, so that we can kind of measure the quality of care that we actually deliver. So it's kind of making sure that we know ourselves, what we're good at and what we're not good at. Sometimes we're kind of, we can say it, but what we need to do is ensure that we have that evidence around that. And the same as anybody else, you know, we have to continuously improve and look at how we learn from those areas like SARS and DHRs, all the kind of learning stuff to improve services. But also that's ever changing depending on what is happening nationally and locally, in terms of how what services we provide moving forward and how we provide them. So the core of our the core principles of person-centred care, which I'm pretty confident that everybody's is aware of person-centred care, and it's very much centred within the Care Act. So it's one of the main things that we really need to kind of consider when we're working with individuals. And the core principles are around respect and individuality, recognising each person as unique with their own values, ensures dignity and personal respect. We have to kind of ensure that we don't make assumptions based on people's ages and disabilities or diagnosis. Sometimes there can be a natural assumption that comes from lots of people, is that if a person has a diagnosis of dementia, that we're already considering that they either need care, or they need to be in a care home, or they're not safe to be at home, or that actually they don't have capacity. So we have to be really mindful of not making those assumptions just based on diagnosis and the age of somebody. So that's what our reflective supervisions are around, to make sure that we're not making those assumptions. It's also about choice and empowerment. Empowering individuals to make decisions promotes control and independence in their care. And when we refer to care, we're not always talking about a package of care. We're talking about any kind of intervention that somebody might have from an adult social care worker. So whether or not that's a formal provision, or whether that's advice and information, or that actually they're just part of their lives for a short period of time while they're in crisis. So that's what we mean by care. It's not just a package of formal support that we're talking about. But it needs to be holistic. So often from any referrals, we may actually get what other people would like that person to receive and what they want us to do, but we need to make sure that actually that our approach to them is holistic. So it's addressing everything as much as what we can do. It doesn't necessarily mean that we deliver it all and we provide it all, but actually our assessments need to take that approach, that it incorporates all of the areas. So it's emotional, the social, we need to think about their cultural needs, and it's really important that we involve family, friends, and other professionals within that. So it's about working with individuals, and that it fosters partnership, empathy, and a clear communication. What's also really, really important is obviously making sure, like I know that some of the other services have talked about language, is that's something that we need to be really, really clear about, is the language that we use. Because sometimes, you know, as professionals, we kind of get embedded in our own kind of language and what things mean, and we use acronyms and, you know, all of that kind of thing. We need to make sure and ensure that we are, you know, our language is accessible, and that also the information that we provide is accessible. So we're doing quite a lot of work around easy read documents as well at this moment in time. So obviously, like we've said, it's also about choice and control, empower people to make decisions about their own care and support, and recognising that actually our views and our opinions may differ from what other professionals may be thinking, or what we may be thinking, but it's about actually ensuring that that person has a voice to express their options, and that we're respectful to the choices that they make, even if sometimes we don't always feel comfortable with the decisions and the choices that they do make. It's about dignity and respect, treating people with kindness to uphold their rights and ensure privacy, confidentiality, and culturally sensitive care. And obviously it's around supporting individuals to do as much as they can for themselves, and that we focus on strengths and capabilities and not just needs or deficits. And sometimes that can feel from the outside looking in that we're trying to prevent people from getting services, or we're trying to delay people from getting services, and we're not. The Care Act is very much saying that that's where we need to focus. We need to look at people's strengths. We need to recognise their capabilities, and not just focus on what someone can't do and what they haven't got. That provides a much more holistic assessment for them in the long term. So how do we do this? I'm assuming it's going to be exactly the same in the north as it is in the west. I think I'm right in saying that, is that we do this by implementing the 3 conversations model, which at its core is a strength-based model. That's what it is. It's a strength-based model. So the first conversation is your initial contact. So that might be a bit of information. It may be that somebody has made a referral, that they're struggling at this moment in time. So that initial contact is really, really important. So that might be the one and only contact that they need to have with adult social care. But we need to try and get as much information from that person, ascertain their situation and how we can support them, whether that's with advice and information, and that they don't need anything further from us moving forward. It's about focusing on what matters to that person and what support networks they have already in place in their community. So we need to be knowledgeable of services like that have already spoken today, and services local to the LAP areas that people might be located in, of what is actually happening in their communities. What community services have they got that we can connect them to, so that we can strengthen their support network. So that initial conversation might be the only conversation that we might have with that person, and then they never come into contact with us again. Or they will go on to a conversation 2, because there might be a short-term piece of work that we need to do with them, or that actually they're in crisis. So whatever we do in that conversation 2 is to try and stabilise that situation. So it could well be that they have no benefits, that they have they know they have no money, so therefore they don't have any food, they don't have any fuel. There could be lots of different situations that would take us onto a conversation too. So what we'd be doing is working with that person to say, okay, this is the crisis.
Everything's okay.
Sorry. So what led to the crisis, and what strengths and resources are available, and what can we do quickly to resolve that situation. So it might not be a long-term piece of work. It may just be, again, that we just need to intervene in that period of time and connect them to the right services, put the right things in place, and then actually if that crisis was to happen again, it may be that actually they can reach out to the services that we've connected them to. Or what we may identify is moving through those conversations is that we need to move on to the conversation three, which is the Care Act assessment, which is probably what everybody is very familiar with. What I would say about all of these assessments is that they're all statutory requirements in terms of we have to provide information advice, we have to consider such areas as reduce, prevent, delay. So they're all really important interventions that we take within adult social care. Obviously, the Care Act assessment is obviously a bigger piece of assessment, and that helps us identify as to whether or not that person has needs that aren't being met. It may not mean that we are the service that needs to provide those needs, but it gives us an idea of, okay, we've addressed all of these areas in conversation 1 and 2. However, once we've moved on to a conversation 3, the Care Act assessment, there's still some areas that haven't been resolved, and actually we potentially are looking at a more long-term service. So that's where we would work with that person to kind of say, what does that life look for you in the longer term, and what can we do to sustain that support that you're going to need. And that could be, at the end of it, is a long-term package of support, but it doesn't always have to be. So I'll hand over to Julie.
Thanks, Catherine. Hi, everyone. I'm Julie. I'm a senior social worker at West Northants Council, and I'll carry on from where Catherine's just finished. So in regards to the 3 conversation model, we're going to look at this case study. So this is Margaret. She's age 78. She lives alone in a bungalow in Northampton. Margaret has mild osteoarthritis and early stage dementia, and her support network are a daughter who visits every week and a neighbour who checks on her every day. And this is sort of a typical person that would come to us and be referred in. So, as Catherine was saying about the conversation model, what would we do? Well, we'd meet Margaret and we'd undertake the conversation 1, and that's all about listening and connecting. And as Catherine said before, it's about what does Margaret want? What is her outcomes? What is, does she want from this? And Margaret says, well, what matters to me? I want to stay in my home. I love my garden and my cat. I don't want to be a burden to my daughter. So that's what she wants from this. And then we look at her strengths. So as we said before, it's not about going straight into what are her needs. It's about, well, what are her strengths? What can she already do? What does she like doing? So Margaret's strengths are, she's got a strong relationship with her daughter and her neighbour. She enjoys gardening and cooking, and she has capacity to make decisions with support. And then we look at what Margaret used to do. Is there something that she did that she's not doing now that we can help her do again? Look at those community connections. Is there something in the community that we can link her to, get her involved in? So Margaret previously attended a local memory cafe, and she's a member of a church group, but she hasn't attended that recently. So then what immediate actions can we do from that? So we can reconnect Margaret with the memory cafe, refer her to a local gardening volunteer scheme for light support, and provide some information on assistive technology. So that would be like medication reminders, anything that she needs to help support her and help her to continue living in her own home. And then we move on to the conversation 2. And as Catherine said, this is about working intensively with someone in a crisis situation. So in this situation, Margaret's had a fall in the garden and has been found by her neighbour. So in that case, we need to do something quite quickly. She's obviously at risk and she's injured herself. So the occupational therapist has visited.
Yeah, David.
They've put some equipment in place, some grab rails and walking aids, and they've already been installed. And we've put in some short-term reablement support. And that's just for a 6-week period to help Margaret while she recovers from a fall. And what's the outcome of that? Well, Margaret's regained her confidence and her mobility, and it's avoided a hospital admission and residential care. That support at home has meant that we've helped her recover and get back to where she was, and she doesn't need any further care. We've referred her again to the local gardening volunteer scheme for light support and provided information on assistive technology. And again, that can be medication reminders. As she's had a fall, it may be that we advise she has a lifeline so that she can call someone, and if she does fall again, you know, she won't be waiting. And our involvement may end at that point, like Catherine said, because we've dealt with that crisis. Margaret is back to where she was and she doesn't need anything else. But it may be that we do need to move on to the conversation 3. And as Catherine said, this is the Care Act assessment. And this is where we'd be looking at, does Margaret meet the eligibility criteria? And that means, you know, can she do 2 or more of the specified outcomes? And we have a list of outcomes that someone should reach. And if they don't reach those, they don't meet those, then they would be eligible. So Margaret does meet that eligibility criteria because she is having difficulty managing her personal care and nutrition. She's at risk of social isolation and it is impacting on her well-being. So then what would we do? Well, we look at putting a support plan in place, and this is co-produced with Margaret and with her daughter. And for Margaret, it's not a big support plan, but it's just something to help her. So it's 3 hours a week of home care for meal preparation and light cleaning, a weekly befriending visit via Age UK, so that she's got someone to talk to and to keep her socialising, a personal budget, which helps fund the gardening support that we're putting in place for her. And also we'll look at advanced care planning initiated with her and her daughter to look at a care plan for the future. When we've put that plan in place and that's working, we'd obviously review that. So an initial review would take place after 6 weeks or so to check how it's going. And then there'd be an annual review. And obviously, if something happened in the meantime, if her needs increased, if her health deteriorated, if she needed more support, then usually what would happen, the daughter or someone would contact us and we'd go out and do a review. We wouldn't wait for the yearly review, we'd go out and do an unscheduled review and put that further support in place if that's what's needed. And then the last slide here is around co-production. So what is co-production? It involves people who've had lived experience of our service becoming involved and helping us plan and deliver care services. It's about empowerment through collaboration, so engaging carers, families and communities fosters ownership and empowerment in care decisions, and inclusive and person-centred care. So inclusive practices and shared decision making create more responsive and personalised care interventions. So it makes sense really, doesn't it? If someone's been involved with our services, they've had that experience, possibly positive or negative, then they're really an expert in that, and they know what sort of planning needs to be done and what care services need to be delivered that maybe can be improved upon, improve our practice, and they can really shape care services going forward by their involvement. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that, Catherine, about the co-production.
You know, that's my that's my little thing at the moment, isn't it? I'll say little thing. For anybody who knows around co-production, it's quite a big thing really. But in the West, we have developed an offer around experts by experience, because where we've always traditionally done some pieces of work with experts by experience. I guess what we haven't is really kind of made that a solid offer So we are much more proactive at using experts by experience, and the service that manages ours, so it's a bit more neutral, is Voluntary Impacts Northamptonshire. So they hold our register of people, experts by experience, we encourage staff to kind of make sure that they can, that the people that they're supporting and working with know how to become an expert by experience. Our EBEs have been involved with our carer strategy, our advocacy. We're doing quite a lot. We have a co-production board that is managed mainly with experts by experience about what pieces of work we need to kind of look at as a local authority and make sure that we've got people with lived experience involved in the production of that. So yeah, moving forward, it's obviously we do co-production on the front line in terms of how, like Julie said, with our care and support plans, but actually it's really important that we have experts by experience in all levels of our delivery of service, you know, right from the top to from strategic stuff all the way down to the kind of front line. So yeah, it's quite exciting that we've got that in place and it's developing.